Você está ouvindo o podcast Estudar Direito pelo Mundo. Neste podcast você aprenderá com Klaus como você pode alcançar o sonho de realizar seu mestrado em Direito fora do Brasil. Envie suas perguntas e depoimentos no Instagram @klauslau.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Studying Law Around the World, Estudar Direito pelo Mundo podcast. This is season number 2, episode number 7, and today I'll be speaking with Tainá Baylão. She has done her studies in Germany. She is currently a student in an LL.M program, and she's studying Transnational and European IP and IT law. So I'm super excited to talk with her to learn a little bit about how does it work to do an LL.M in Germany? What are the benefits of studying there? And especially in such an interesting area and one that I feel like has several good possibilities for the future. So let's welcome Tainá. Thank you so much, Tainá, for your willingness to join us today. To start this podcast a little bit, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself, introducing yourself to your public?
Hi, thank you, Claudio. Hi, everyone. Nice to have you all here. I'm very grateful to be here with you all tonight. My name is Tainá. As Claudio said, I'm just 26 years old. I graduated from my LLB in Brazil about 3 years ago. And then I moved to Canada because I was planning to do my LLM in UBC in Vancouver, actually. And I wasn't going to pursue an LLM in IP and IT law at the time. I was planning to do a common law LLM. And I was planning to revalidate my diploma over there so I could be a lawyer in Canada. But due to personal reasons, prices, it was extremely expensive to do LLM there. And then I couldn't get a scholarship. I had to change my plans. And then I end up in Germany in my current LLM. I've been doing it for about 1.5 years. We had 1 year of classes, and now I'm focusing on my thesis, which I should have finished by the end of this month of March. And I'm doing my thesis into data processing agreements, which are contracts between controllers and processors in a data processing interaction. So basically that's me in an academic area. From a professional perspective, I've been acting as a lawyer for almost 2 years now, but in totally different areas. I started with civil law, business law, then I entered into Social Security law, which is very specific to Brazil. It's even hard to explain to foreigners what that means. But yeah, that was my specialty until the end of my university. But right now I'm specialized in data protection law and privacy law. And I am a lawyer in one of the biggest law firms in Brazil, which is very exciting, PEC Advogados. We have more than 100 lawyers specialized only in digital law. So, but it's a very new and growing area. Most cities in Brazil, we don't even have law firms that do this kind of expertise, but it's a very interesting area for anyone in the law. Anyone can join now and enjoy that. There's not that many professionals qualified, so anyone can jump on this ship because it's going to sail, but it's going to be a very successful ship in the future, and right now, of course.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much for mentioning that. I would say that it's definitely good timing as well to be studying that, and as you just mentioned, it's an area that is growing a lot, especially as several countries now have started with their data protection treaties. Just recently in Brazil, and yeah, I'm somewhat familiar with the GDPR in the European Union, and I think it's PIPDA. Not sure how they pronounce it over in Canada, but I know that several countries are taking care of that now. So that's interesting.
True.
That's definitely a promising area. And let me ask you, I noticed you're open to changing your area of law, and that's really nice when you think about starting a career in a different field. That's always very interesting. I'm wondering here, how was it a hard adaptation? Did you have any background on things related to technology, and do you feel that having or not having one made a difference when you were studying in your LM? What are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I had no background with law and technology at the time. Of course, I was always keen and very knowledgeable about it. I tried to keep as up to date as possible, but it was not something that I worked with or actually pursued. My bachelor thesis was about competition law and Netflix. So because Netflix is such a new streaming technological instrument, it was a good way to get into technology, but was very, I only touched base there with technology, and I really enjoyed it. So I actually thought I was going to go to competition law. We actually had that in my master. It was one of my favorite subjects, but it's a very different field. And from a practical perspective, I don't enjoy it very much. I love studying it, but for a profession, I don't think I would pursue that in the near future, for example. But I don't think that not having a background would impact you that much, because it's a very new field. Even the legislators and the jurists, no one has answers. Everything is a gray area. For example, the legislation in Europe, the GDPR, it's more comprehensive than ours in Brazil with LGBT, but still the courts are figuring out and drafting new guidelines and new regulations every day. And we always have to keep up to date with the news, because things change from a day to another. It's very fast how things actually happen in this field. But of course, that if you have interest in technology, that would for sure help, because most of what I do, even though it's legal, we see a lot of IT in it, a lot of cybersecurity. So even though you're not an expert in that, you should be open-minded to learn these kind of things. I know a lot of lawyers in this area, even colleagues that are specialized in both fields. I have friends at the law firm that are lawyers and IT specialists. They have both majors, because it's very important. I know a lot of lawyers that know how to code because it became something important. It's not something necessary, like you can survive without it, but would be good to at least know the basics of it.
Fantastic. That's so good to know. That makes me think about also so many other things. So this is the first time ever I'm interviewing somebody who's done an LM in Germany, especially with a Brazilian background. And what I normally will talk to with people who are studying in the US is about the differences they see in the methods, in the teaching, difficulties that students normally will face, the language, the tests, everything normally is somewhat different than what we're used to. And at the same time, some things just work everywhere in the world, so they're the same. But I was wondering, what were some of the main things that you noticed? And also, if you can add to that, were most of your classmates international students as well, just so we can understand it a little better?
Yeah, so my class had about 30 to 40 people, and I should say 98% were international. We had 2 colleagues that were Germans, but that was it. 2 out of 40. And we actually had someone that was from the city, but she was the only one. Everyone else was from, a lot of people from Turkey, from India. I had a colleague from Brazil as well. I had a veteran, which is my senior, 2 years before me. She's actually my boss in the law firm right now. She also did the LLM 2 years before me. We also have people from Kenya, for example, from Ireland. We don't see many people from North America though. Most people are from Latin America. We also have people from Chile and Uruguay, and yeah, overall Latin America, India and Turkey are the biggest over there. But yeah, the German system of teaching is very different from the North American system. It's actually very similar to the system we have here in Brazil. Mostly because they are also a civil law environment. It's not like common law that we have in Canada and the UK and also the US. So classes are basically lectures, just like we have in Brazil. It's a teacher with slides explaining everything. And we have assignments for about a lecture, but everything is after the teacher have taught you. It's not like in the US and Canada that usually you have to go to the class already prepared and you have to just go there and debate the subject with the professor. That's not how it works in Germany. It's basically like Brazil. There's a teacher, he has slides, and then he just gives a 2-hour lecture about a subject, and then you do your homework about it, and then in the end, you take a written test about it. Usually we have different kind of examination, but most of it are cases, real life cases with the scenarios, and you have to apply the theory to the actual cases. And then we have the thesis. And as I mentioned with you before, we don't have to present the thesis to our teachers. We just send the final thesis for them to read and grade us.
Fantastic. That's very interesting. So in general terms, it sounds like it's very, very similar to what we have in Brazil, to what a master's would be like in Brazil. Would you say that that you found some other things that were similar as well? I don't know. I'm thinking about the organization of the university, of the professors. Do you have anything that maybe stood out to you as you were, getting adapted to the experience?
I can say something that was different. The grading system, it can be somewhat confusing in the beginning because they grade us from 1 to, I think is 1 to 5, if I'm not mistaken. But the confusing part is that 1 is the highest grade. So yeah, it can be very confusing. So 1 is the highest, and they round up, like they don't have like 1.2 or 1.6. There are specific grades that you can get. So you have 1, which is equivalent to 10. Then you have 1.3, which is 9.5. Then you have 1.7, which is 9. And then you go 2, 2.3, 2.7, 3. And then if you get less than, if I'm not mistaken, it's less than 6, it's our 6, but for them, I think it's 4 or 3.7. I think it's 3.7. If you get less than that, it's basically 0. It doesn't matter if you got 5.5, that's 0. It doesn't matter. Everything below that is 0. So it's hard to it doesn't matter if you can go to your teacher and say, oh, it's only half a point. Please help me out, because for them, it's not half a point. You failed. You completely failed. It doesn't matter. But yeah, they have a small table with the comparative values with one is like 100% and equivalent to an A plus. So they have these three different systems. For example, the A plus, A minus that you have in North America, and also the percentages that we have, for example, here in Brazil. But in the beginning, it was very concerning. Like I knew I did well because I knew the system, but it feels very weird to get a 1.3 in an exam and feels good about it. It's like you got a 1, it feels terrible, but it's not. Yeah, but it's actually very hard to get 1. It's almost impossible. They don't grade 100% very often. So most people usually go from 1.7, 2.3. That's average, at least in my class. And you could see the average of the entire class from different years as well. And in our internal system, actually, this is very similar to Brazil as well. Like we have the university website and you can check your grades there. You can sign up for classes. Something that I found was very interesting about the university is that they have the tuition, and then you have, for example, 100, not 100, but like 20 different classes. And you only have to take 8 to pass plus the thesis. So you have to get 40 credits. But you can take as many as you want, and you're not going to pay more for it. So if I want to take all 20, I can take all 20. They don't recommend it because it's going to be so hard, but you can take all of them and not pay a single dime more for this.
That's fantastic. That's really, really nice. I'm also thinking about, it's so nice that I heard all of these. Just very interesting situation and whole organization. I know that Germans are kind of well known to be well organized and such things. Did you also feel a more maybe a teaching that was given in a more structured way? Would you say that, can you comment maybe on the quality of education and how you liked it?
It depends because actually most of our teachers were not professors. They were professionals in the area. So most of them were lawyers. They only teach for 4 weeks in a year. They don't do that for a living. We had a lawyer, for example, in data protection law, which is a lawyer for Baker McKenzie, which is one of the biggest law firms in the world. So, but we have a few professors, in-house professors. They were minority, but we had like 3 or 4 of them. But to be very honest, I prefer the classes of the professionals itself. I feel that the practice makes more sense to me than just keep stuck in the theory. If you have a practical example that you can apply the theory, I feel that's more, I think that's easier for me to learn. But we had very good teachers. And also, like I said, the classes were divided between IP law, which is intellectual property law, and information technology law. So you're not obliged to take any classes. You only have to get one of the introductions. So you have introduction to IP and you have introduction to IT. You only have to choose one of them. You don't have to do both. And that's good because most people are specializing in one of these 2 fields. So I took both because I didn't know what I wanted to do at the time. I haven't made my mind yet, but most people only choose a path and only take classes related to that specific field. So it depends very much of what you want to pursue. That's it.
Got it. Yeah, fantastic. That's super nice. Yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, it's so nice. You mentioned you got a job already and everything. So pretty sure it was very worth it. Maybe just to round up, as we approach the end of our meeting today, I'd like to know how this how did it all work out for you? So you did mention something about your classes being online before we started the podcast, and could you tell us a little bit more about it? Because for what I understand, you started in July 2020. Is that correct? Okay,
yeah. It was November 2020.
Okay.
Yeah. It was supposed to be October, but they delayed it 2 weeks to see if they could actually make it in person. And until the last second, it was supposed to be in person because they really wanted to. And I actually flew to Germany. I was in Frankfurt already when I got the email 3 days before classes started that it was going to be online. So it was very disappointing because I was already there. I had a list. I had a list an apartment. I had a contract, and I was working on my residence permit already, and I had my whole life prepared to stay a year there. But it didn't make sense to me to stay there during a lockdown because it wasn't just, oh, classes are going to be online. It was a full lockdown. All the restaurants, everything was closed. So I was like, what is the point of staying in a foreign country, paying everything euros, which is a lot more money for us that come from Brazil and earn in reais. And I really wanted to stay, but it didn't make sense to me at the time. So I flew back to Brazil after a month, after I have settled everything, so I could stay there. When I came back with the visa and everything, I had my permit and I had unpacked and built my apartment. And then I flew back to Brazil because they were, after the winter break in January, definitely it's going to be in person. And it wasn't. And then in the summer semester, when we start in April, it's going to be in person, but it wasn't. And in the end, I had to fly back there just to cancel my rent and then get everything. I basically stayed there for 2 months, a month the first time I went and a month the second time. But it was very hard to take classes online. Of course, it's good because you can fit into your schedule and all the classes were recorded. So you didn't necessarily have to watch them live. But sometimes I'm like, I just don't want to watch the class today. I'm going to watch it tomorrow. And then a lot of classes were piling up. And then when you saw it, you have like hundreds of hours of classes and you were falling behind. So you have to be very careful about this. And also, it's complicated to take classes online. You don't bond with your colleagues as you're supposed to. You don't know anyone. Most people don't even turn on their cameras. So most people, I don't even know how they looked like. So that was not good. And sometimes we have problems with connections and with someone's camera or something like that. And it's hard, basically, when you have online classes or a bunch of slides and people reading slides. It's hard to run from that. But yeah, I still feel there was a very, very worthy experience. The LLM is great. We have great teachers, but you have to really keep an eye to yourself. So if you just let yourself go, you're gonna just slack, and then you have to be careful and you have to be extra hardworking to follow everything. It's hard, especially something that I thought very peculiar about this course. I don't know if it's all Germany or if it's just this curriculum or if it's just the pandemic, but the classes were basically like this. So I'm taking IP law, introduction to IP law. I'm gonna take only this class for 4 weeks. You're not gonna take 4 or 5, 6 classes at the same time during a semester. You take a specific class. You can take even like 2. I took IP and IT at the same time, but we only have these 2 classes the whole week. And then After a month, they were done. You take the test and that's over. You move forward to a different subject. For example, for competition law, we had only a week of competition law, and it was only competition law. So we had 4 or 5 hours a day of competition law from Monday to Friday. And in the following Monday, we had the final exam. So it can be hard because they're still learning. It's like 1 week. How do you actually learn a whole course in 1 week and then take the exam and then move forward? So if I didn't took competition law, for example, I wouldn't have any class that week. So you can take small vacations or breaks by deciding not to take a subject. For example, I thought that was very weird for us because we're used to have 5, 6 classes, different classes throughout the week during the whole semester. And that's not what I experienced. I don't know if something Germany does or if it was because of the pandemic, but I know that the course is still being held like this. And I think it's very weird.
Wow, yeah, that definitely is so different than everything I've heard before. Definitely.
Yeah.
Let me ask you too. How do you pronounce the name of the university?
It's University of Göttingen, but that's actually the English name. If you go to the German name, it's Georg August Universität. I do not speak German, so I'm not quite sure if that's the correct pronunciation of it. But yeah, most students I saw were international. It's a very international university. And it's a very, like the whole city revolves around the university. It's not that big, and the university is the biggest thing ever. So most people there are professors or students or people working on their PhDs. But yeah.
Interesting.
Even though sorry. Even though it's a very
I didn't do too
international
much of a
city.
research. Yeah, I didn't do too much of a research of like where it is in Germany. So what are the biggest cities close by, and how far are they? And do you need to have a car necessarily? Can you do everything by train? I know Europe's kind of famous for, being able to do public transportation easy.
Yeah. It's 2 hours by train from Frankfurt. So usually when I went there, I just flew São Paulo to Frankfurt and took the train. But the biggest city close by is Hanover. The university is in the Lower Saxony state. You can also take a train to Hamburg. It's about 3 hours. A train to Berlin, also about 3 hours. I think if you go to München, it's about 4 hours. It's a bit further away, but the city is very small. We don't really need a car to do anything. You can actually do anything you want by foot or by bike. They also have buses, but I basically only use my bike and I was walking on foot.
There you go. Fantastic. Well, Tainá, it was so nice to hear a little bit about your experience in Germany. Thank you so much for your willingness to share it. And thank you all guys for listening to this episode. I hope you all can consider many options now that we know that the US is not the only option for LLMs. I've had several people from other countries coming here, and now we have yet another option, Germany. So pretty excited to learn more about how that works in Germany. It was very nice to see these differences and compare it to what we have, and for my personal background in Brazil too. So thank you so much once again, Tainá, and I hope we can continue our collaboration in the near future.
For sure. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye, guys.